Good afternoon and welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Let me start with a radio interview I did with Radio 702's Bruce Whitfield, The Money Show, talking about my concerns about coronavirus making landfall in Africa and also about the feedback loop phenomenon between China and Africa and how I thought that was going to knock Africa for six, I'm afraid. Macro thoughts: suppressed World Bank report finds nearly $17 billion of its own aid is stolen, stashed in offshore havens out of $59 billion. That's via the Horse Cure. Aidan Hartley in The Telegraph has a report to that. Just click on that link. Shanghai Composite Index back above 3,000. Chinese stocks are now just 1% down since the start of the year. That's JS Blockland. And clearly they're now using the currency as a shock absorber. And on the 13th of August, I said the most important currency to watch right now is the renminbi. And it's weakened now to its lowest level this year. This chart is via JS Blockland. Home thoughts: morning haze and hues in the Amboseli. Photo by Jonathan Kaelo via Kenya Pics. And the Amboseli is the place to visit if you want to see elephants, and it has a beautiful vista with Mount Kilimanjaro in the background. This is Bamburi Beach, Mombasa. This photo is taken by Zam729, a lovely photograph. And then sunset hues in the Mara, and I think these are the lion cubs we saw when we visited the Mara in January. A pervert tries to assault this lady on an elevator. Good for her, Rex Chapman. And she looks like a fierce kung fu fighter, and good for her. Life is not only full of sound and fury, it also has butterflies, flowers, and art. Claude Simon. Humanity has pretty much come unhinged. Camilo Jose Sella. And you might well think that, given what we've seen happen this year. View looking south from the top of Tiananmen Gate, overlooking what would later become Tiananmen Square. This photograph is by Hedda Morrison, circa the 1930s. The source is the University of Bristol Historical Photographs of China via Beijing X-Foot. And on the occasion of China turning 70, that's the Communist Party, this is another photograph of Tiananmen Square on that occasion. President Trump is seen in this video arriving in Las Vegas, Nevada. That's from behind the scenes Dan Scavino, who's his digital strategist. Watch President Trump in Washington on his visit to India. I happen to like Prime Minister Modi a lot. He told me we will have 7 million people between the airport and the event, and that's via Leon Lidigu. It's going to be the largest stadium in the world. It's going to be very exciting. According to The Guardian, President Trump offered Julian Assange a pardon if he denied a Russia link to the hack. The extraordinary claim was made at Westminster Magistrates Court before the opening next week of Assange's legal battle to block attempts to extradite him to the United States, where he faces charges for publishing hacked documents. The allegation was denied by the former Republican congressman named by the Assange legal team as a key witness. Assange's lawyers allege that during a visit to London in August 2017, Congressman Dana Rohrabacher told the WikiLeaks founder that on instructions from the president, he was offering a pardon or some other way out if Mr. Assange said Russia had nothing to do with the DNC leaks. Rohrabacher denied the claim, saying he had made the proposal on his own initiative and the White House had not endorsed it. At no time did I talk to President Trump about Julian Assange, the former congressman wrote on his personal blog. I wrote about this in December 2016 in an article, We Have a Deviate Tomahawk, and I said the first thing is plausible deniability, the second thing is non-linearity, and I was quoting Beppe Grillo, who said traditional media has been disrupted and the insurgents can broadcast live and over the top, from feeding the hothouse conspiracy frenzy online, a constant state of destabilized perception. And the author of that quote, Surkov, has also been fired. Timely and judicious doses of WikiLeaks leaks which drained Hillary's bona fides and her turnout and motivated Trump's. I said, what we have witnessed is something remarkable and noteworthy, and that Putin has proven himself an information master and his adversaries are his information victims. Let's move on to the virus. Thank you. Let me dance for you. Bei, a 5-year-old COVID-19 patient, was discharged from a hospital in Xi'an, Hubei on Monday. This was her way to say thank you. That's via People's Daily China. Dr. Tom Frieden, the odds of containment look vanishingly small, but not quite yet zero. Update status, coronavirus. This is 20th February 2020 as at 5:30 GMT via Data Graver. But as you know, I have tremendous skepticism about these numbers that are being published. A colourful graph speaks louder than 10,000 words about an epidemic. Japan and South Korea are now the new hotbeds, it seems. This is via Jody Graphics 15, via Dr. Eric Ding. 3rd of February, I tweeted Bianco Research, and I said, I think, as you suggested, we need to study evacuee ex-China infection rate. And I think that's a better statistical sample to be looking at. China says virus spread possible via aerosol in confined space. Diamond Princess cruise recorded 79 new cases, increasing the total number of confirmed cases to 621, and that number has increased further. That's via William Yang. And I responded to William, how many other cruise ships are out there? And there must be many. Diamond Princess numbers reflected on Wuhan alone are 2.53 million infected, 7,700 dead, 114,400 critical. That's via Crypto E. And that's just converting Diamond Princess into percents and used as percents of 11 million for Wuhan's population. And that's probably more accurate than some of the numbers that we're getting. Viruses, as we know, exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. Again, see the cruise ship. If so much as one person in a country of 1.4 billion is still sick, breathing on co-workers, this whole thing starts all over, Bianco Research. I know Wuhan is not a cruise ship, but these numbers put Wuhan reported numbers into perspective. That's Anil Vora 69. For all of Hubei Province, including Wuhan, cases 61,682. That was then. Deaths 1,921. Keep in mind that the infection has been spreading exponentially in Wuhan since mid-December. That's Anil again. But as we know, University of Toronto researchers modelling this epidemic says it started 1 month earlier than commonly believed in November 2019. You can't get up to that level of cases if the epidemic started in December, even if you pushed the reproduction high. As cases mount, Japan is rapidly becoming a coronavirus hotbed. The number of infections in Japan has more than doubled in the past week to 74, that's excluding the cruise ship, rivaling Singapore as the country outside mainland China with the most cases. The government is being faulted for being too slow to bar visitors from China and too lax in its quarantine of the Diamond Princess cruise ship, where infections surged during 2 weeks that it was docked in Yokohama. What appears to be more troublesome is that Japan is starting to see a surge in cases in multiple areas across the country, sometimes with little to link the outbreaks. The government's decision to wait for the China-friendly WHO to make its much-delayed declaration of a global health emergency led to the first cases of domestic person-to-person transmission and tarnished the country's international reputation. That's Richard Koo at Nomura Research Institute. China-friendly WHO is a kind way of phrasing it. While a handful of the cases in the country are evacuees from Hubei Province, the vast majority are Japan residents, many with no history of travelling to China. A party on board a pleasure boat for a group of taxi drivers is believed to be at the heart of one cluster of cases in Tokyo, spreading to at least 11 people. The US and others have placed a 14-day quarantine on repatriated nationals, but about 500 people cleared by Japan left the ship Wednesday to go about their normal lives and were told to call authorities if they fall ill. Then we have the Temple of the Tabernacle of the Testimony. Confirmed coronavirus cases in South Korea have nearly doubled in a day, with a surge tied to a cult whose members may have contracted the virus from a single patient. And that reiterates the point about non-linearity and exponential characteristics. A computer image created by Nexus Science Communication together with Trinity College in Dublin shows a model structurally representative of a beta coronavirus, the type of virus linked to the coronavirus outbreak. Reuters, at least 90 of more than 1,000 other people who attended the church services were showing symptoms, officials said, in what Korea's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention described as a super-spreading event. One of the enduring images of the current coronavirus outbreak is a space-age looking thermometer pointed at an airplane passenger, says CNN. While the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has screened more than 30,000 passengers in the past month, not a single US coronavirus case has been caught by airport temperature checks, according to a CNN investigation, and that's worrying for Africa as well. WHO says to only believe their facts to avoid misinformation. What are these facts? Asks Jeff's NZ Views. Jan 20, no person-to-person transmission. Jan 30, person-to-person confirmed. Jan 26, it's not airborne. Feb 10, airborne confirmed. Jan 15, hard to catch. Feb 2, more virulent than SARS confirmed. And that speaks to Groucho Marx. Who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? They are frankly unbelievable, really. And that speaks to that article by Epsilon Theory, the industrially necessary Dr. Tedros. The truth is that only now, 2 months into the epidemic, is WHO sending a team to start investigating the virus. Director General Dr. Tedros on February 4th, we call on all countries to implement decisions that are evidence-based and consistent. Roger that. There's just one problem. The evidence here, taken without adjustment or question, was from the CCP and was a bald-faced lie. Saying that China wants to ban speech and shame people into being called fake news. But what is happening at the most senior levels of the World Health Organization is not just a disgrace. It is not just a humiliation for the people who are doing good and important work. It is a betrayal of the entire world. And as I said, what is clear is that the CCP suppressed information until we reached a Groucho Marx, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes moment. I take you back to The Answer by Bei Deo, who famously said, I do not believe. I don't believe the sky is blue. I don't believe in thunder's echoes. I don't believe that dreams are false. I don't believe that death has no revenge. China Foreign Ministry says China has revoked journalist credentials of 3 Wall Street Journal journalists. This is in response to the US designating 5 Chinese media companies as foreign missions. It basically reflects the Trump administration's view that the Communist Party of Xi Jinping is imposing increasingly draconian government control over news services. Includes Xinhua, China Global Television Network, China Radio, China Daily Distribution, and Haitian Development USA. And now we learn that China is shutting down the internet in Wuhan. And as I said, a non-linear and exponential virus represents the greatest risk to a control machine in point of fact. Asia Times, welcome to the year of the virus. Academic Zhu Zhiyong, the founder of the social campaign New Citizens Movement, was reportedly arrested at the weekend in the southern city of Guangzhou after accusing Xi of being clueless. The virus outbreak shows just how important values like freedom of expression and transparency are, the exact values Zhu has long advocated. Another high-profile victim is Zhu Zhangrun, about whose article I read to you. He called Viral Alarm, When Fury Overcomes Fear. He's been placed under house arrest and barred from using the internet. Confined him at home under the pretext that he had to be quarantined after a trip. A climate of fear now exists as China's central government closes down chat rooms of dissent. Every aspect of the coronavirus coverage on state-run media has Xi at the center of the message. Xi has extensive experience at silencing viral ideas, but controlling an actual virus itself is outside his experience. So at the very least, we can say he appears to be playing a high-risk game, said Taylor. The myth that Xi and his supporters have sustained about the virtues of centralized control has been demolished. A healthy society should not only have one voice, will remain etched in the minds of hundreds of millions of Chinese who have seen for themselves that censorship can endanger their lives. Welcome to the year of the virus. As I said on the 7th of October, the world in the 21st century exhibits viral, wildfire, and exponential characteristics and feedback loops which only become obvious in hindsight. Recorded epidemics since 1960, a clear trend. Democracies seem to experience lower mortality rates than their non-democratic counterparts. Free flow of information saves lives. In China, if you've been censored, you've been harmonized. I learned from Stephen McDonnell. Viral Alarm, if you're interested in reading that essay, When Fury Overcomes Fear, is there as well. They now turn to rule over the people by means of what could be dubbed big data totalitarianism and WeChat terror. I've written about Xi Jinping and his algorithmic control before. Gary Kasparov, the point of modern propaganda isn't only to misinform or push an agenda. It is to exhaust your critical thinking, to annihilate truth. Let's move on to the markets, where we continue to see enormous volatility and a huge move in dollar-yen. Euro-dollar 107.90, dollar index just shy of 100. Japanese yen, the big mover over the last 48 hours, 111.73. Swiss franc 0.9842. The pound 128.97. The Australian dollar 0.6637. India rupee 71.61. South Korean won 11.9990. Brazilian real 4.36. Egyptian pound 15.585. And the South African rand is at 15.07226. Mighty US dollar approaching huge levels. This is the market ears chart. As I said, on the 27th of January, investors dived into safe havens, and I said then we could see these moves turn parabolic. It is a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola. They must have guessed, once or twice guessed, and refused to believe that everything always, collectively, had been moving toward that purified shape, latent in the sky, that shape of no surprise. No second chance, no return. Dollar index is very close to topping the 100 level. That's David Inglis. Euro dollar, I still think we're headed a lot lower. We're currently at 107.86. And this is also the euro in Germany, a part of the China EM frontier feedback loop. This phenomenon was positive for the last 2 decades, but has now undergone a trend reversal. And I said the fallout is being experienced as far away as Germany Inc. The rand is the purest proxy for this phenomenon. African countries heavily dependent on China being the main taker are also at the bleeding edge of this phenomenon. And I said then the pressure point will not ease soon, but will continue to intensify. Little did I know how. Commodity markets, 13th of January, given this uncertainty I've outlined, gold looks well underpinned and might even have a banner year, I said. 27th of January, markets bought gold and G7 bonds as investors dived into safe havens. Next week, we could see these moves turn parabolic. Gold last at 1608.75 and headed higher. Crude oil somehow has clawed back up to 53.64. But it's going to turn lower imminently. Turkey's central bank cuts rates again. Last year, in an interview with Sputnik, I called it Erdogan's hocus-pocus monetary policy. And 20th of January this year, I said I remain a little surprised that the UAE and Saudi Arabia have not visited economic warfare on Istanbul, because it does look ripe for the plucking. Crazy times. Lebanon's yields hit over 1,000% as the government calls in bond advisors. Bond yield soars to more than 1,000%. It just happened in Lebanon. Admittedly, it's maturing in very short time, so it's now just trading on price. $1.2 billion of notes due on March 9 fell to a record low of 60 cents on Wednesday, sending the annualized yield to 1,290%. Currency, which has been pegged to the dollar since 1997, is increasingly likely devaluation if the nation fails to secure external funding of at least $10 billion this year. The Lebanese pound trades around 2,400 per dollar on the black market, almost 40% weaker than the official rate of 1,507. Korean won is at a key level, breaking 1,200, and it's 1,235. That's Raoul. Debt burdens have increased and affordability has weakened across most of Sub-Saharan Africa, while a shift in debt structures has left some countries more exposed to a financial shock. Moody's. Sub-Saharan African sovereigns' debt has increased and affordability has deteriorated. The debt burdens of most Sub-Saharan African governments will stabilize in 2020, 2021 after years of increase. Several sovereigns are now increasingly vulnerable to a financing shock, Moody's Investors Service said in a report. Republic of the Congo, Mozambique and Zambia are the most exposed. Ghana, Angola and Kenya are also vulnerable, but to a lesser extent. They added the domestic banking sector remains the main holder of domestic bonds and a significant portion of total government debt, and its absorption capacities may be limited, especially when the sector is small relative to the sovereign's financing needs. 9th of December, I touched on this and I wrote an article called Time to Big Up the Dosage of Quaaludes. Indian Navy adds invisible anti-submarine warship to Indian Ocean Fleet Sputnik. China has been adding around 20 warships a year, while the Indian Navy, a dominant force in the Indian Ocean, has managed to add just 1 or 2 warships a year. In December 2019 alone, China added 3 anti-submarine warfare capable type D056A Jiangdou class corvettes. The ASW corvettes have catapulted the Indian Navy into the elite club of countries that have built stealth ships. This class of warships is equipped to fight in nuclear, biological and chemical warfare conditions and features the integration of a host of weapons and sensors. 6th of August 2018, I was talking about how the Indian Ocean, China, the BRI initiative, the Gulf countries who now appear to see the Horn of Africa as their hinterland, Japan and India, and I was saying India to a lesser degree, are all jostling for geo-economic positioning in the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean region is expected to become the geostrategic center of gravity in the new Cold War. That's Andrew Korobiko. I agree with that. August 2013, I said, I have no doubt that the Indian Ocean is set to regain its glory days. South Africa is debating an amendment to permit the expropriation of private property without compensation. Secretary Pompeo, that would be disastrous for that economy and most importantly for the South African people. The policy proposal is an example of centralized planning that has failed in other African states like Zimbabwe, Tanzania and Ethiopia, Pompeo said. South African All Shares up 1.5% year to date, dollar rand over 15, and it's going to hit 15.50 as a very minimum, I think. Egyptian pound is firm, rate decision expected today. EGX 30 down 1.91% so far this year. Nigerian All Share is up 2.54% so far this year. Ghana Stock Exchange down 1.78% this year. Kenyan exports dropped to a 3-year low on lower tea and coffee earnings. Total exports fell to 595.28 billion in the year to December from a record 612.88 billion a year. Trade deficit increased to a record 1.16 trillion from 1.145 trillion. Business Daily. Safaricom likely to borrow to fund Ethiopia telecom bid, and that's why the share price is weakening. We do know the investment to build the network in Ethiopia will be big. This is Michael Joseph. So all of us will have to borrow to invest. The composition of the consortium will be on your willingness and your capability of taking on debt and your willingness to take a risk. Their balance sheet is very unleveraged in point of fact. Unlike Kenya, where Safaricom's business became profitable within 3.5 years, Joseph said Ethiopia is probably a 10-year journey. We cannot go in there as Safaricom and provide mobile money services if we have to give it all away to somebody else just under some sort of technical support. We will if we have to, but in the end, we want to have a license to provide those services, so the regulations will have to change. Safaricom closed at 29.95, and we probably see further weakness as people factor in leverage on the balance sheet. Chinese fish found with 427 times recommended amount of lead. This is a hard-hitting investigative report by the Daily Nation. Despite the long distance from China, the fish from China arrives at a retail price of $2.30. This is less than $5 that local fishmongers ask for. A nation investigation then revealed that the fish had traces of mercury, lead, arsenic and copper. They shared their findings with the Kenya National Bureau of Standards. the agency whose job it is to set safety standards, denied that the fish imports posed any danger to human health. All imports to Kenya are required to be tested in the country of origin, and if they meet the specifications and the standards, they are issued with a certificate of conformity. Upon arrival in Kenya, the imports are subjected to destination inspection, KEB said. As part of the Rotting from the Deep investigative series, they bought a 10-kilogram box of tilapia fish freshly shipped from China, emblazoned with fresh and delicious, gutted head on and quick frozen. The fish samples had 7 dangerous pesticides, among them phosolone, 7 times the maximum allowable limit. Other pesticides detected in the fish included tolufluoride, flutonale, deltamethrin, acinethrin, pretilachlor, and tebufenipriad. These classes of pesticides can cause cancer, mouth ulceration, dysphagia, and abdominal pain, among other diseases, if ingested. Lead in fish from China was found at 42.7 ppm. This is 427 times the FAO and WHO recommended level of 0.1 ppm. The same fish samples had relatively high levels of zinc. Excess zinc causes stomach flu, or what is known as gastroenteritis. Wow. Available data shows fish imports crossed the 2 billion shilling mark in 2017, and this figure has been doubling every year. BAT reported full year earnings per share was down 4.896%. Gross revenue was up 9.127%. Net revenue was up 15.85% at 24.03 billion. Cost of operations was up 26%. Profit after tax was down 4.896%. Dividend, full year total dividend payout was down 4.286%. EPS was down 4.896%. Cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year was 1.811 billion, up 853%. Company performed well in Kenya and across its export markets to deliver good revenue growth. Profitability was lower due to significant increases in regulatory costs in Kenya following the introduction of a solatium contributory levy impact and a 20% increase in excise duty rates during the year. Excise-led price increases have continued to adversely impact consumer affordability, leading to lower cigarette sales volume and a high incidence of illicit trade of 11.3%. Cost of operations increased by 26% to 18.3 billion, mainly due to the estimated impact of the introduction of solatium in 2019. Incremental costs led to a decline in operating margins by 6.2 percentage points to 23.8%. PE ratio 12.85, net revenue gain of 9.127% translated into a profit before tax retreat of 5.917%. They're speaking of a trend of lower sales volumes and a higher illicit trade quotient of 11.3%, which will trend higher. It is a strong dividend-paying stock, but at the moment, with interest rates looking as if they could go a little bit higher, the value of that dividend flow might not be as good. Nairobi All Share down 4.24% year-to-date, NSE20 down 4.94% year-to-date. Thank you for listening.